Wow.
So you're challenged by this, and they very frequently say it's your challenge. You know,
Yeah.
that's your if you struggle with something, if there is
Yeah.
let's say sinful thoughts of
Yeah.
this or that form, that's your challenge. You know,
Yeah.
and that's your job to develop the new insight into it. So it's bevadai machshava zara ba'al letikuna kedei lahalota l'shorsha. It's coming to you for you to fix it.
So there's a point to these bad thoughts. I mean, that's your work.
Yes, exactly. The only thing that stops you from davening is akra, the scorpion. And what's the akra, right? So the Gemara says it's very strange. If you have a snake, you don't stop davening, but if you have a scorpion, you stop davening. So what stops you from davening? Loss of faith. There's moments of ultimate nullity, of negativity, when you don't feel that you have the ability to do it. When you lost it, that's when you have to stop. And then that's when you have to gather your legs together. You have to pull it up. That's the akev. So when you can do that, when you can, at that moment of when all is lost, when the metaphysical husks, shells are making your life dark, your soul dark. If you can pull up from that, that's the akev tishmu. That's what his argument is. But I thought that was brilliant. And I thought that was because it was exactly what 2 points that you brought up last week, and this just what I happened to open on Friday night.
Yeah.
That prayer is new every day, and you have to believe that because every day the universe is like a new universe.
It's good. It's good.
It's like when when there's love, when you see the person you love, every time it's something new. Or when you see people that you hate, every day some new nagging. nag. No, that's easy to understand. That people know. The new love, they don't have a hard time with. So I thought that was a good. That was one thing I wanted to say. So I thought that was worth bringing by on this akev of our conversations. There were a couple more that I had a couple other ideas about akev.
They were talking about I'll buy you some time, so let me know it. This week's Parsha is Parshas Akev. That means it goes from chapter 7, verse 12, well into the 12th chapter of Deuteronomy. This is the third parasha of the book of Devarim, book of Deuteronomy, which is the fifth book of the Pentateuch, or the Torah, 5 books of Moses. There are all these blessings on Israel as we begin the parsha, and these are blessings on Israel as a collective, not necessarily on every individual Israeli. So you can be a righteous Jew, and you may not necessarily be blessed with riches, with grain, with wine, with oil, with fertility, with children, with good health. So if Israel as a collective observes the commandments, then according to these texts, and also it would mean in a vacuum. Like Israel could observe the commandments, but if Iran drops a nuclear bomb on them, just because Israel observes the commandments, not going to be shielded from the effects of radiation. Or Jews may be very pious in Eastern Europe, but if the Nazis gain power and determined to wipe them all out, they'll still all be wiped out. So, in a vacuum, ceteris paribus, as we would always say in economics, all other things being equal, if the Jews observe the mitzvot, the Jews as a collective will be blessed. So I'm not sure there's any this-worldly blessing for keeping a mitzvah beyond the blessing inherent in the mitzvah.
Well, yeah, that's the famous Kedusha Levi, teaching of Levi. It says, schar mitzvah, right?
The reward of a mitzvah is a mitzvah.
So that's one way to read it is that the reward for a mitzvah is that you get another mitzvah, like you get a chance to do another one. But I think the point that I'm going to make about the akev and all that, and it's a good way of summing up some of this argument, is that schar mitzvah, mitzvah. The reward of the mitzvah is the the growth that you attain as a result of traversing that space, of going through that experience.
Dennis Prager said something which I found really interesting. He said that if you're finding Judaism a burden, like if you're finding the laws of Shabbat a burden, finding the laws of Kashrut a burden, if you're finding these ritual laws between man and God just a burden that makes you miserable, consider cutting back on your observance level rather than just going about unhappy. So he's not saying if you find paying your taxes honestly, go ahead and cheat. No, it doesn't apply that to the laws between human beings, the ethical laws. But he's saying with the ritual laws between man and God, such as the dietary laws, the laws of Sabbath and festivals, says if they're making you miserable, if the observance of them, like you're doing something wrong, and if you can't straighten it out, rather than going about as miserable but observant, consider cutting back on the observance a little bit. And that's so interesting because I meet so many.
Say the opposite, exactly the opposite.
Okay, well, I find so many observant people who are just miserable because of their observance. Like Orthodox Judaism makes them miserable, and I think it's a desecration of God's name to go around saying and living, that this is just an overwhelming burden that I hate and makes me miserable. I think there's something very wrong there. So, what does the Sfat Emet say?
Well, I mean, there's a lot of things in life that are miserable. I mean, you see, you're shielded from a lot of them, but if you you have to go to work every morning, that sucks. And you've never done a night call, or maybe you have in your previous line of business.
I've worked.
But I mean, night call, like we have to stay up all night in the hospital and then the next day, and it's horrible. But you have, you know that you have to do it, and when you know it like that, it's not. It's a very different perspective.
What were you going to say
so the
about
Sfat Emet
Yeah.
will say exactly the opposite. So, and I think he's righter.
So what does he say?
You want me to tell you too?
Yeah.
Okay, so the line goes that so we have to backtrack. Let's work it into what we're saying about Akev.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a famous Rashi, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it says Akev Tishmun, and the famous Rashi you have it here. Ima mitzvot hakalot she'adam dash be'akevav tishmun. So it says, what does it mean? What is Akev Tishmun? It means the mitzvot, the little mitzvot that nobody likes to do, that people, the big ones. Not murdering,
right.
all those things, that people get. But the little ones, like, keeping, I don't know, what's the little mitzvah? Keeping code, there's a lot of them. And
Well, I'll give you one, being concerned about the type of plates that you eat off of.
Yeah. Okay, fine. So all of these little technicalities that,
Yeah.
So he says a very interesting thing. I think this is right on. A lot of things have reasons, right?
Mm-hmm.
And actually it does say, it specifically says hamishpatim, which are the kind of the rational things. But he said, I love this line, Ki mitzvot kalot ein adam oseh avor haschar. The thing about little mitzvot, the trivial ones, if you want to, we can use that phrase, the ones that you kind of kick them with your shoes. Nobody does those for the reward. When you do Shabbos, you think, oh, I'm holy, keep kosher, oh. But, when you do the little things, you do it because you believe that that's God's will.
Yeah.
So that's what he says. So those for that reason, it's specifically those that are the ones that are linked to this kind of blessing. Because everything else, look, we didn't originate laws, and we're not the only society with laws. Lots, it's a human natural thing to. Nobody wants to live in a state of, Leviathan, where people have to sit outside their house with a gun and shoot away people from stealing their stuff all day.
Yeah.
I mean, societies exist, but the spiritual practices, the disciplines, and that's a Dennis Prager thing. I remember that from reading. However many questions it was many years ago.
The 9 questions people ask about Judaism.
I was very influenced. But it's those specifically those mitzvot, the ones that people really hate.
Yeah.
Those are